Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the movies and Battleship New Jersey. Of the Iowa class, Missouri is certainly most famous for her screen time in both the documentary Under Siege and the more recent movie Battleship. But New Jersey gets a little bit of screen time herself. Before we get to that list, we are back here in the Chief Petty Officer's Lounge, where they are projecting a movie tonight. And film projection movies would have been very common on board throughout most of the battleship's career. It was common for World War II era ships to each deploy with two films on board, and then they would typically watch them one and then the next, and then the next night they would reverse the order so that folks who had different watches could potentially catch up with them. And you'd basically keep watching those same two film reels until you came alongside another ship for an underway replenishment, and then you would trade movies. New Jersey, being a capital ship that frequently refueled the smaller ships under her, probably had a pretty good selection of movies that they could trade out and get new ones pretty frequently. World War II submarines, far less so. Oftentimes, ships would have had film booths and film lockers as part of the original blueprints of the ship. I haven't been through the ship's World War II plans to see where those might have been on New Jersey, but oftentimes there would have been cutaways in the bulkheads of mess decks so that they could project a film through. On the battleship, our mess decks are large enough that probably wasn't the case. By the 1950s, they add that really small building structure just aft of Turret 3, which originally served as a film projection booth. There was a screen that would be erected on Turret 3. We also have evidence that they would have done it inside the ship in spaces like the lounge here. There are pull-down projection screens like this one in a number of spaces like the mess decks and the wardroom. Initially, we saw like these brackets hanging there with screw holes in them. We didn't know what they were for. And then we found original screens like this one stowed in multiple places around the ship as part of the mothballing process that matched up perfectly. So in many cases, we've rehung them where they go. We've also found brackets mounted in the overheads, especially on the mess decks, where a surround sound speaker system similar to these would have been mounted in the overheads and all wired in. In 1968, when the ship is reactivated for Vietnam, the present that the state gives the ship is a closed-circuit television system. And in the 1980s, that is turned into a sight system, which is a closed-circuit TV studio on board. Shipboard Information, Training, and Entertainment is what SIGHT stands for. And we've talked about that and the TV studio in a couple of previous videos, so go back and check those out if you haven't heard of that before. Movies played a very important part of life on board the ship. It was huge for crew morale to be able to sit down after a day of work and watch TV, just like it is at home. It's that little bit of connection to the real world, a little bit of connection to life before that I've been told by many former sailors made life bearable, as long as they could trade out their movies. What kind of movies did they have on board? They pretty much go through a list of movies released in that time period, and they were getting relatively recently released movies. I've seen the actual film log notebooks on other ships. I've never found New Jersey's, but on other ships, it's, you name a movie, the Terminator movies, the Jaws movies, and any of those sorts of films that were coming out about a year or two before would have gone into the military inventory and then been dispersed to ships. And it seems like they were watching all the big names, and then there was a ton of names on there that I didn't recognize. But you look them up and yeah, it was a movie that came out around that same time period. So, those are movies on New Jersey. How about New Jersey in the movies? Two of the greatest naval fiction authors of all time seem to have liked New Jersey and included her in a number of their works. Those being Tom Clancy and Herman Wouk. So, New Jersey shows up more as a mention than as an actual vessel in Tom Clancy's two works, The Hunt for Red October and Red Storm Rising. In Red Storm Rising, she and Iowa perform shore bombardment of Iceland prior to a marine invasion. And in Hunt for Red October, New Jersey's battle group deploys to block Kirov's battle group coming towards the eastern coast of the United States as they're looking for the namesake ship of the book, Red October. In the movie Hunt for Red October, she's mentioned in the flag space scene where Baldwin's Ryan character is talking to the admiral on board. I believe the ship is supposed to be Enterprise in his flag cabin. And they point at a map and they're talking about Independence's group and New Jersey's battle group. And that one line mention is all you get. You don't get any footage of the ship in that scene. Likewise, New Jersey is only mentioned in Herman Wouk's Kane Mutiny court-martial because they're talking about Halsey's Typhoon, and of course they talk about Halsey being on his flagship during this time period. And so in some of the versions of that movie and play, the battleship gets name dropped there as well. In Herman Wouk's work, War and Remembrance, the Robert Mitchum TV show, she plays the cruiser Baltimore for a scene. I've never actually been able to watch that and identify the ship in it. But apparently filming took place on her when she was in commission in Long Beach. Probably the weirdest cameo for Battleship New Jersey has to be in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Kindergarten Cop. That movie is set in Portland, Oregon, and in probably the first half hour of the movie, there's a little montage scene, a series of clips between scenes where they're just showing like typical Oregon life, I guess you'd call it. And one of the scenes is this half-second shot of the stern of New Jersey going under the bridge on her way up to the Portland Rose Festival in, I think it was 89 or 90. Must have been 1990, because Admiral Reason, who was on board in that time, remembers going under that bridge. Anyway, long story short, there was an event with some protesters, so the news came out and filmed it, and it seems like the film studio was able to get B-roll from that news event to just include a fraction of in there. New Jersey also shows up briefly while in mothballs in Bremerton across the pier from Missouri in the movie An Officer and a Gentleman. Richard Gere gets on his motorcycle after visiting a bar, like right at the beginning of the movie. It might be within the first 2 minutes of the movie, and rides out of there with the two battleships framed up on either side of the pier right there in the background. New Jersey's most prominent role, however, was in more of a government-produced documentary piece, and I'm not going to list all the documentaries in which the battleship shows up. But in a government-produced documentary called Floating Fortress, that seems to be filmed almost exclusively on board New Jersey, and that's some of the best footage of the ship that has survived. It's all black and white footage. It's from the 1950s, but it's all open source, and so it gets reproduced a tremendous amount in both traditional documentaries, and we use it a lot here on the channel too. Several smaller budget movies and TV shows have also filmed on the battleship since she's been opened as a museum. Although I don't have a list of all of those, and I haven't been present for the filming of most of them, a lot, so I can't really talk about them too much. So what's your favorite Navy movie, especially a movie filmed in part or mostly on an actual active ship? Two of my favorites, of course, are the documentary Under Siege, which is filmed primarily on Alabama but does have some B-roll on Missouri while she's active. And, of course, my favorite movie of all times is The Final Countdown, which is filmed largely on the aircraft carrier Nimitz, which had only recently been commissioned. Let us know your favorites in the comment section down below. If you happen to be a film director, Battleship New Jersey is available to rent out for filming. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of the businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about us and the channel. Thanks for watching.